10:20 a.m., June 4th, 1942, the middle of the Pacific Ocean. If you were standing on the flight deck of the Japanese aircraft carrier Akagi at this exact second, you would think Japan had already won the war. The sun is shining, the sea is calm, and the morale of the Imperial Navy is skyrocketing. Commander Kiichi Nagamo looks out from the bridge. He sees his Zero fighters dominating the sky, swatting down American planes like flies. He sees his deck crews finishing the final preparations on a massive wave of bombers. In his mind, the American fleet is weak, amateurish, and about to be annihilated. But Nagamo doesn't know that the clock is ticking. He has exactly 5 minutes left, 300 seconds. In 5 minutes, this invincible fleet, the pride of an empire that has swept across half the globe without a single defeat, will be turned into burning scrap metal. In 5 minutes, the history of the world will pivot on a dime. This is the story of the Black 5 Minutes of Midway. But to understand how we got to this slaughter, we have to rewind the clock. We have to look at the invisible war that happened before the first shot was even fired. Because this wasn't just bad luck, it was a trap. The story really begins in a basement in Hawaii. This is Station Hypo, the U.S. Navy's intelligence unit. It's hot, it smells like stale coffee and cigarette smoke, and it's run by a man named Joseph Rochefort. Rochefort is an eccentric genius who works in his bathrobe and slippers. While the politicians in Washington are arguing, Rochefort's team is listening to the radio. They've cracked the Japanese naval code JN-25. They know a massive attack is coming. The Japanese call the target AF. But where is AF? Is it the Aleutian Islands? Is it the west coast of America? Or is it Midway Atoll? Washington thinks it's the Aleutians. Rochefort is convinced it's Midway. But he needs proof. So he concocts one of the most brilliant bluffs in military history. He orders the base at Midway to send out an unencrypted radio message complaining that their freshwater distillation plant has broken down. 2 days later, the Japanese intercept this message. They take the bait. Tokyo radios the attacking fleet. AF is short of fresh water. Rochefort slams the decrypt on the admiral's desk. AF is Midway. Because of this one trick, the Americans aren't surprised when the Japanese arrive. They are waiting. 3 aircraft carriers, the Enterprise, the Hornet, and the Yorktown are hiding in the waters northeast of Midway, silent and ready. The Yorktown is a miracle in itself. The Japanese thought they sank her at the Battle of the Coral Sea, but American repair crews fixed 3 months of damage in just 3 days. So dawn breaks on June 4th. The trap is set. But war is messy. Even with the element of surprise, the Americans are the underdogs. The Japanese fleet is larger. Their pilots are veterans of Pearl Harbor, and their Zero fighter is the best machine in the sky. The tragedy of the Japanese defeat begins with a single mechanical failure. The Japanese cruiser Tone carries a scout plane, number 4. Its job is to search the sector where the American ships are hiding. But on this morning, the plane's catapult malfunctions. It launches 30 minutes late. Those 30 minutes are the difference between life and death. Because of that delay, Commander Nagamo is fighting blind. He sends his first wave to bomb Midway Island. The pilots return and say, "We need to hit it again." Nagamo agrees. He orders his reserve planes, which are armed with torpedoes to attack ships, to be rearmed with high-explosive bombs for land targets. Picture the scene in the hangars of the Akagi and Kaga. It is chaotic. Mechanics are rushing to remove heavy torpedoes and replace them with bombs. The torpedoes aren't returned to the safe magazines below. There's no time. They are just pushed to the side of the hangar. The air is thick with fumes. Fuel hoses are everywhere. The carriers are effectively turning into floating bombs. And then, the delayed scout plane finally calls in. 10 ships sighted, Nagamo freezes. Ships? American ships? He panics. If there are ships, he needs torpedoes, not bombs. He orders the crews to stop everything and switch the weapons back to torpedoes. Now the chaos in the hangars is absolute. Bombs, torpedoes, and fuel are scattered everywhere. The crews are exhausted. And it is at this precise moment of maximum vulnerability that the Americans attack. But the first American attack is a disaster. The first to arrive is Torpedo Squadron 8 from the USS Hornet. These men are heroes, but they are flying into a slaughter. They are flying the TBD Devastator, a plane so slow and obsolete it's practically a death trap. They have no fighter escort. The Japanese Zero fighters swoop down from high altitude and tear them apart. Of the 15 planes in Torpedo Squadron 8, all 15 are shot down. Only one man, Ensign George Gay, survives. He crashes into the ocean and hides under a seat cushion to avoid being strafed, watching the battle from the water. Then comes Torpedo Squadron 6 from the Enterprise. They are also massacred. To the Japanese, this looks like a turkey shoot. They are cheering. They think the Americans are incompetent. But they don't realize that these suicidal torpedo attacks have sealed their fate. Why? Because physics. To shoot down the low-flying torpedo planes, the Japanese Combat Air Patrol, the Zeros, have all descended to sea level. They are swarming right above the water. They have used up their ammunition and their fuel maneuvering against the torpedo bombers. This means the sky above at 15,000 feet is now empty. The God's eye view is undefended. Enter Wade McCluskey and the dive bombers of the USS Enterprise. McCluskey is leading 2 squadrons of dauntless dive bombers high above the clouds. But he has a problem. He can't find the Japanese fleet. The ocean is empty. His fuel gauges are dropping into the red. He has a choice: turn back to safety or keep flying into the unknown and risk running out of gas. He decides to keep flying. At the limit of his range, he looks down and sees a tiny white streak on the blue ocean. It's a single Japanese destroyer, the Arashi. The Arashi had lagged behind to depth charge an American submarine and was now steaming at full speed to catch up with the main fleet. McCluskey makes the call: follow that ship. The Arashi leads them straight to the main body, and there it is. The Kido Butai, the most powerful naval force on Earth, and because of the torpedo attacks earlier, there are no Zeros to stop the bombers. The Japanese look up, but it's too late. The sky is raining death. We are back at 10:20 a.m. The countdown hits 0. The American bombers tip over into their dives. It's almost vertical. The wind screams through the dive brakes. Due to a communication error, almost all the bombers target the carrier Kaga. She is hit by 4 or 5 heavy bombs. Remember those piles of unattended bombs and torpedoes in the hangar? They all go off. The Kaga is gutted instantly. She essentially turns into a blast furnace, but the flagship, the Akagi, is untouched. The Americans have missed her. Lieutenant Richard Best, flying one of the trailing bombers, sees the mistake. He sees his squadron mates all diving on the Kaga. He pulls up. It's a desperate maneuver. He signals his 2 wingmen to follow him, and they bank hard toward the Akagi. 3 planes against an aircraft carrier. Best dives. He holds his aim steady through the anti-aircraft fire. He releases his bomb. It is a perfect shot. The bomb smashes through the flight deck near the midship elevator and explodes in the upper hangar, right in the middle of the fully fueled planes and the armed torpedoes. The explosion is catastrophic. The blast wave buckles the flight deck. The induction of air into the fires turns the ship into an inferno. Commander Nagamo, the man who thought he had won just 5 minutes ago, is forced to crawl out of a window on the bridge to escape the flames. In 5 minutes from 10:20 to 10:25, 3 Japanese carriers, the Akagi, the Kaga, and the Soryu, are destroyed, but the battle isn't over. The Japanese are warriors. They have 1 carrier left, the Hiryu. Her commander, Admiral Yamaguchi, is one of the most capable leaders in the Navy. He sees the pillars of smoke from his sister ships and immediately launches a counterstrike. His pilots are the elite of the elite. They follow the American planes back to their home and find the USS Yorktown. The Americans fight like hell. The Wildcat fighters intercept the Japanese and the anti-aircraft fire is thick. But the Japanese push through. They hit the Yorktown with bombs. The Yorktown is tough. Her damage control teams get the fires out and patch the flight deck so quickly that when the second wave of Japanese planes arrives an hour later, they think it's a different, undamaged ship. They hit her again with torpedoes. This time the Yorktown is doomed. She lists heavily and is abandoned. But the Americans have the last word. Scouts from the Enterprise locate the Hiryu later that afternoon. The surviving American pilots, exhausted, shaken, many of whom have lost their best friends that morning, climb back into their cockpits. They take off into the setting sun. They find the Hiryu. 4 bombs rip her open. Admiral Yamaguchi chooses to stay aboard as she sinks, tying himself to the anchor. When the sun sets on June 4th, the balance of power in the Pacific has flipped forever. The Japanese lost 4 carriers and over 3,000 men, but the most critical loss wasn't the metal. It was the pilots. These were men with hundreds of hours of combat experience, the samurai of the sky. They could not be replaced. Japan would build more ships, but they would never again have a pilot corps like the one that died at Midway. So, was it luck? It's easy to say yes. It was luck that the scout plane was late. It was luck that McCluskey saw the destroyer Arashi. It was luck that the torpedo attacks pulled the fighters down, but luck is just the residue of design. It was the design of American intelligence that put the fleet in the right place. It was the grit of the torpedo pilots who flew into certain death that opened the door. And it was the split-second decision-making of men like Richard Best and Wade McCluskey that seized the opportunity. Midway teaches us a brutal lesson about conflict. You can be bigger, stronger, and more experienced, but if you become arrogant, if you hesitate, and if you let your enemy dictate the terms of the engagement, you can lose everything in 5 minutes. The American pilot George Gay, who floated in the water watching the battle, was rescued the next day. He held the memory of his fallen squadron mates for the rest of his life. They were the bait that caught the Leviathan. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the turning point of the Pacific War, make sure to like and subscribe. Next week, we are going to the freezing forests of the Ardennes to analyze the Battle of the Bulge, Hitler's final desperate gamble. You don't want to miss it.